That pushback that we saw from Beijing in the world of diplomacy, was that simply a necessity, or are we overthinking this?
Well, I think Beijing is very sensitive to any criticism generally, and certainly sensitive to an increase in COVID cases, although not too many increases of deaths. So it's a sensitive issue for both sides. And also, let's not forget that this basically started in China, in Wuhan, whether the market or within the lab, that's really immaterial at this point. So it's very sensitive. It's very sensitive in the U.S. too. It's a trade-off between protection on one hand and the economy on the other. China is facing the same thing.
Right, and I would imagine we have to underscore that it is the U.S. prerogative to tell their workers and the diplomatics and their staff there to leave if they need to. What would you have done if you were in that situation before? And if you are connected to some people there, what are you hearing on the ground? What is happening?
Well, coincidentally, I just got off the phone with Ambassador Nicholas Burns, and he told me the situation is very dire in Shanghai. And he made the call that non-essential workers should be able to go home. And it's the right thing to do. It's very clear to him and other parts of China as well. I guess he really emphasizes how difficult it is for American employees there and for non-essential workers there. So that's the call he made. And it's tough in China. I have a lot of friends who want to go to China but can't because of the quarantine. It's very, very tough. And he mentioned that because of the quarantine, it's going to be virtually impossible for anybody to come over from the United States to see a government official to China for quite some time. So it's very difficult.
Okay, and since you mentioned you were on the call with Ambassador Burns there, I need to ask you though, I mean, at this point, what sort of preparations would be normal given the circumstances in Shanghai as it pertains to the other consular offices, including, of course, the big one in Beijing?
Yeah, well, again, non-essentials even in Beijing are allowed to go home. This is a very sensitive issue to our ambassador. He's new. He got confirmed a long time ago, but because of COVID restrictions, he was unable to travel to Beijing. And he had to sit in the residence there for 3 weeks before he could even get to the embassy. So he's very sensitive, and he's a very caring person. I know Dick Burns quite well. He's very caring. He cares very much about the health and the safety of American employees and citizens, and that's one of his primary concerns, and that's just to protect Americans.
Now let's broaden the discussion if we can here. It's a very important, if not perhaps the most critical year here politically in China. You have the Party Congress coming up. How do you think that shapes the decisions that Beijing takes, whether that's the economy, COVID policy, or even what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, during my time serving in China, I became very impressed with the consistency and the continuity and just the dedication of the Chinese leadership to accomplish what they want to accomplish. They're fearless. They're going to do what they need to do to get the job done. And because it's autocratic, it's a one-party state, and because there's such opacity, it's very hard to know exactly what the government's going to decide to do. But clearly, Xi Jinping wants to be elected. He wants his third term coming this fall. He wants the country to be doing well, obviously. He wants people to see their incomes rising, kids taken care of, COVID addressed as well as it possibly can be. Now, people are reasonable. They know that COVID's a problem. They know that COVID cannot be just eliminated immediately tomorrow, but they can still want to see some progress, and he's going to do all he can to help accomplish that. Then there's the economy. I see reports today where Premier Li Keqiang is concerned about the economy. He's talking to local officials, say, hey, stop COVID, but open up a little bit here because we got to get going.
It's lives and livelihood, as he alluded to there. I want to ask you about Ukraine, and certainly we've had you on since the war started there. Do you think the situation has now evolved to a point where net it might be in China's interest to take a more proactive approach than simply trying to distance itself and hoping it goes away?
No, I think China's very involved with Russia, clearly. China's very disappointed at the mistake Putin's made in Ukraine, but that's just a problem that China has to face. China is going to try and have it both ways continually. That is, they'll publicly say they're the peacemaker, and they do want peace, frankly. Most countries want peace. But on the other hand, under the table, like off the radar screen, they're going to be helping Russia. I don't think they'll do anything they'll cause more sanctions to be imposed on China that is in their help with Russia, but they're going to help. And really, I see that Ukraine, unfortunately, developing into a long slog. The reports are that there's going to be a big face-off in the next several days in eastern Ukraine, and Russians are bringing heavy artillery. The Ukrainian military now has more heavy artillery. It's going to be a real military battle, it looks like. And Putin, only language Putin understands is power. He's not going to negotiate unless he can negotiate from a position of strength. And I frankly think much of this comes down to Putin himself. How long does he last? Will the generals overthrow him? Will the Ukrainians kind of beat him up too much so there's not much left? But a lot of it comes down to how forceful Putin's going to be. I unfortunately think it's going to be a slog for some time. It's going to be a real problem because it causes supply chains, energy problems. The Ukrainian economy is going to go down the tubes. It's going to be a real problem that we're all going to be facing. You feel it in China too.